She said 8 words and erased her father from Christmas. Not because he yelled, not because he hurt anyone, not because he refused to help, but because someone else decided he was too complicated to sit at the table. He spent that night eating alone, pretending the empty chair across from him didn't feel personal. 7 years later, the same daughter stood in his living room crying, begging for a second chance he never thought he'd get. This isn't a story about shouting revenge. It's about the quiet kind, the kind that builds slowly, patiently, until the people who push you out realize you didn't fall apart. You built something better. We've all felt that sting of being slowly edged out, not through a big fight, but through small exclusions, fewer calls, shorter replies, invitations that stop coming. It's a strange kind of heartbreak because nothing dramatic happens, yet everything changes. This story starts with a father who thought love meant showing up, paying bills, fixing problems, staying steady, and a daughter who slowly started believing someone else's version of him. If you've ever been told you're too much or too difficult, or quietly replaced, stay with me, because what happens later flips the emotional scoreboard in a way no one saw coming. And if stories about family betrayal and earned redemption hit home for you, subscribe now, because these are the cases that stay with you long after the video ends. He was in his early 60s when the call came. Snow outside, evening light fading. He expected details about gifts, travel plans, maybe what dessert to bring. Instead, he got a boundary he didn't know existed. Dad, don't come. Michael says it's too complicated. No anger in her voice. Just tension, like she was reading a decision already made. He replayed that sentence for hours. Too complicated how? He wasn't loud. He wasn't cruel. At Thanksgiving, he disagreed, politely, during a political discussion, and changed the subject. Apparently, that was enough to earn a silent veto from his son-in-law. Christmas Eve found him at a restaurant built for people with nowhere else to be. Polished wood, soft music, too many couples, too many families. He ate slowly, tasting nothing. Halfway through the meal, a stranger's age approached and said, "Would you like to join us? We have extra space." That moment didn't feel historic. It felt awkward, small, easy to refuse. Saying yes changed the next 7 years of his life. The couple, warm, relaxed, gently funny, treated him like he belonged within minutes. No interrogation, no pity, just conversation that flowed. Work stories, travel mishaps, grandchildren's chaos. When he mentioned spending the holiday alone, they didn't dramatize it. They simply made room. Before the night ended, they invited him to Sunday dinner. Here's what gets overlooked about loneliness. It doesn't always come from being alone. Sometimes it comes from being unwanted by the one place you thought you were guaranteed a seat. He almost didn't go that Sunday. Pride nearly kept him home. But he showed up with nothing but a hesitant smile and walked into noise, laughter, and the smell of slow-cooked food. Their family treated him like a returning relative, not a guest. The kids showed him drawings. The hosts put him to work setting the table. No ceremony, just inclusion. And inclusion can be more healing than apology. Weeks became months. Sunday dinners became routine. He helped with homework, fixed a cabinet door, taught a child how to play chess. No one asked him for money. No one asked him to prove himself. They just kept expecting him to show up. Meanwhile, silence from his daughter stretched thin and brittle. Holiday texts replaced calls. Then even those faded. He told himself she was busy. That marriages are complicated. That patience is love. Then, 2 years after the Christmas rejection, his phone rang. Her voice was strained. Financial pressure. Business trouble. Urgent timelines. She needed a large sum of money. Fast. He waited for the bridge sentence. The emotional reconnection. The "I miss you." It never came. Only numbers. Deadlines. Justification from her husband relayed secondhand. And in that moment, something inside him straightened. He realized he was being invited back into her life, but only as a resource. Saying no wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was steady. He told her he loved her. He told her he wouldn't fund a crisis he didn't create, especially after years of distance. He said love and access weren't the same thing. She called him selfish, said he'd changed, said she'd been warned about him. The line went quiet. He expected emotional collapse after that call. Instead, after the first wave of grief, came relief. The exhausting performance was over. The pretending was done. That's the part people don't talk about. Boundaries can feel like loss and freedom at the same time. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became honest. He retired, started volunteering, kept attending Sunday dinners with the family who chose him without obligation. Revenge at this stage looked boring from the outside. Routine, stability, laughter around a table that once held an empty chair. 5 years passed. Then came the hospital call. An accident. Serious injuries. His daughter listed him as emergency contact. Notice that when everything broke, his number was still the one written down. He arrived expecting resistance from her husband. Instead, he found distance, inconvenience, minimal presence, logistics problems, travel conflicts. So the father she once excluded moved into her home to help her recover. No speeches, no scorekeeping. He drove her to appointments, cooked meals, took care of her child, sat awake during painful nights. Quiet service, without revenge theatrics. One night, she admitted what she thought about in the ambulance, that their last words to each other might have been final. That realization cracked something open. Regret is loud when mortality gets close. She saw the contrast clearly now. The man she pushed away showed up daily. The man she defended stayed, mostly absent. Illness has a way of removing narrative filters. Here's where the emotional reversal happens. She asked to meet the people who had become his real support system, the Sunday dinner family, the ones who filled the gap she created. He worried it would be tense. It wasn't. They welcomed her instantly. No interrogation, no resentment, just warmth. Grace can be more disarming than anger. Months later, she left a marriage that had slowly isolated her. It wasn't dramatic revenge. It was clarity earned the hard way. She rebuilt, closer to her father, closer to the people who modeled what steady love looked like. Now Sunday dinners have more chairs filled, more voices, more overlap between past and present. No one celebrates the downfall. They celebrate the return. And here's what I can't stop thinking about. Revenge is usually portrayed as destruction, payback, public victory. But the most powerful version is quieter. It's becoming so emotionally well-positioned that rejection loses its leverage. It's building a circle that doesn't require permission from the people who dismissed you. It's refusing to become bitter, even when bitterness would feel justified. The father in the story didn't win because his daughters suffered. He won because he didn't shrink. He didn't beg for scraps of belonging. He accepted a new table when the old one closed. And when the old door reopened, he walked through without resentment poisoning the room. There's still an unanswered question that lingers. At what point does loyalty become surrender? When should love stop absorbing disrespect? Most people realize that line only after they've crossed it. So I'm curious, where is that line for you? How many exclusions before you step back? How many conditional invitations before you build your own table instead? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more narratives where emotional truth matters more than shock value. Stories about betrayal, boundaries, and the kind of revenge that looks like healing. Because somewhere tonight, someone is deciding whether to beg for a seat or build a better room. And that choice changes everything. What most people don't see is that reconciliation isn't a single moment. It's not one hug, one apology, one shared dinner. It's repetition. It's consistency. It's showing up again and again after trust has already been broken once. The first few months after she moved closer were careful. Polite, almost formal. They spoke more but lightly. Weather, school schedules, groceries, logistics. Real conversations circled them like shy animals that didn't trust the environment yet. He never pushed. That was new. Years earlier, he would have tried to fix everything in one talk, clear the air, define the relationship, extract reassurance. Now he understood something he hadn't before. Pressure makes fragile bridges collapse. So he let silence breathe. They started with coffee on Tuesdays. Same small diner. Same booth. At first, she checked her phone too much. He pretended not to notice. By the 4th week, the phone stayed in her purse. By the 8th, she was the one arriving early. One morning, she said out of nowhere, "I used to rewrite our conversations in my head." He looked up. "How?" "I'd tell Michael a harsher version of what you said, to justify being upset." She swallowed. "It made it easier to side against you." He nodded once. No lecture, no victory speech, just acceptance of truth arriving late. Another shift happened with his grandson. At first, the boy was polite but distant, the way kids are with relatives who feel half familiar. History had gaps. Stories were missing, but proximity rewrites memory faster than explanation. Homework at the kitchen table did more than any apology could. They built a model rocket together, burned one batch of cookies, argued about basketball stats, shared inside jokes that didn't exist 6 months earlier. Relationship is restored through declarations. It's restored through ordinary time. That's the part people underestimate. Ordinary time is the real healer. Meanwhile, the Sunday dinner family never loosened their hold on him. And that mattered, because reconciliation is healthiest when it's addition, not replacement. He didn't trade one table for another anymore. He sat at both. There was one night, late autumn, when everything could have gone backward. His daughter found an old voicemail while cleaning her email, one he'd left years earlier. Gentle, hopeful, asking if she was okay, saying he missed her voice. She played it 3 times and then drove to his apartment without calling first. When he opened the door, she was already crying. "I heard how patient you sounded," she said, "and I remember rolling my eyes when he came in." He didn't rescue her from that guilt. He didn't minimize it. He just listened. Let remorse complete its work. Some pains need to finish speaking before they can leave. "I don't want forgiveness to be cheap," she said. "It isn't," he answered. "That's why we're taking it slow." People think revenge stories need a villain collapse moment, a public downfall, a dramatic exposure, a final humiliation. But real emotional revenge rarely looks like that. It looks like becoming unmanipulable. A year after the divorce, her former husband tried to reconnect. Casual message, neutral tone, testing the door. She showed her father the text, not for permission, but for perspective. "What do you think?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "I think you already know." She did. She didn't reply. That moment right there, that was generational repair. Not control. Not rebellion. Clarity. Another unexpected turn came when she asked him to speak at a small career event for young designers and freelancers. Topic: boundaries with clients and partners. "You're better at this than I am," she told him. "Because I failed at it longer," he said. He told that room of 20-somethings something simple and dangerous. Access to you is not a right. It's a responsive behavior. Half the room wrote it down. Years earlier, he wouldn't have dared say that out loud. He thought love meant permanent availability. Now he knew better. The holiday that marked the full-circle moment didn't announce itself as historic. No music swell. No cinematic framing. Just a crowded house. Too many coats on the bed. Too many dishes in the sink. 2 families overlapping naturally. At one point, he stepped back from the noise and just watched. His daughter laughing with the woman who once invited him to Sunday dinner. His grandson debating strategy with the man who once paid for his lonely holiday meal. Different branches. Same tree now. She caught him watching and walked over. "You're doing that thing," she said. "What thing?" "Inventory happiness silently." He laughed. "Engineers count everything." She squeezed his arm. "Count this, then. I'm proud you didn't harden." That line stayed with him, because he almost had. People rarely admit how close they came to becoming bitter. Bitterness feels justified. It feels earned. It feels like emotional self-defense. But it also would have cost him this ending. Here's the philosophical knot at the center of this story. The part one keep turning over. Revenge usually asks, How do I make them feel what I felt? Growth asks, how do I make sure I never have to feel that again? Those are not the same path. One points outward. One points inward. He didn't get revenge by watching her life fall apart. He got it by refusing to let her rejection define his worth, and by building connection that didn't depend on her approval. When she finally came back, she wasn't his oxygen anymore. She was his daughter again. There's a difference, and maybe that's the real lesson here. Reconciliation only works when attachment is no longer desperate. If you're still starving, you'll accept crumbs. If you're nourished, you can choose wisely. So if you're in that in-between place right now, half included, half dismissed, ask yourself a hard question. Are you trying to get back into a closed room, or are you building a better one? Because sometimes the invitation that changes your life doesn't come from the people who owe you love. It comes from the people who choose it. If this longer journey meant something to you, tell me where you are in your own version of it. Still waiting, rebuilding, or welcoming someone back? Your stories matter here. And subscribe if you want more narratives about betrayal, quiet revenge, and emotional rebuilds that are stronger than payback. Some victories don't make noise, but they last the longest. Years later, when people asked him when things finally felt normal again, he realized he couldn't give them a date. Normal didn't return like a switch turning on. It rebuilt like muscle after injury. Slow, invisible, strengthened by repetition. There were still awkward moments. Still echoes. The first time his daughter forgot to invite him to a school event. Not intentionally, just busy. He felt the old sting rise fast and sharp. The story his mind tried to tell was familiar. See? You're optional again. But this time, he didn't let the feeling write the truth. He called her gently, asked about the event. She gasped, apologized, sent the details, insisted he come. No defensiveness. No justification spiral. Just ownership. That's how he knew the relationship was different now. Not because mistakes stopped happening, but because repair got faster. Repair speed is a real measure of health. His grandson grew taller, deeper voiced, more independent. Their conversations changed from games and homework to ethics and choices and pressure. One night after dinner, the boy asked him, "Did you ever mess up so bad with someone you thought it was permanent?" He smiled. "Yes." "What did you do?" "I stopped trying to win and started trying to understand." The boy thought about that longer than expected. Kids know when answers are real. Another layer of the story unfolded quietly. The Sunday dinner couple began slowing down. Age doesn't announce itself loudly either. It arrives through smaller portions, earlier bedtimes, careful steps on stairs. He noticed first because he was there every week. He started arriving even earlier now, not just to help cook, but to handle the heavy things. Trash out, chairs moved, repairs done before being requested. One evening, after the dishes were cleared, they sat together while the house buzzed in other rooms. "You know," the older man said, "that Christmas when we met you, you looked like someone holding himself together with wire." "That obvious?" he asked. "Only to people who've done the same thing." They laughed softly. "I almost said no to your invitation," he admitted. "I know," the older man said. "That's why I asked twice." There's a detail right there that matters more than it seems. Sometimes rescue looks like gentle persistence. Health challenges came, as they do in long timelines. A surgery, a recovery period. This time, roles reversed. He drove them to appointments, sat in waiting rooms, filled prescriptions. Family is proven in inconvenience. His daughter noticed this too. One afternoon, she said, "You learn how to stay." He answered, "I learn how to choose where I stay." That difference mattered. The emotional climax most people expect in stories like this, a dramatic confrontation with the past, a final speech, a public reckoning, never really came. Real life rarely stages closure like theater. Instead, closure appeared through pattern replacement. Old pattern, he waits by the phone. New pattern, his calendar is full. Old pattern, he explains himself repeatedly. New pattern, he states once calmly. Old pattern, he fears being excluded. New pattern, he builds inclusion. That's what quiet revenge really is. pat a replacement. So complete, the original wound loses authority. But the story doesn't end at healing, because healed people become something else. They become anchors for others through his volunteer work. He started meeting more older adults edged out of their families in subtle ways, not abandoned, just deprioritized, digitally replaced, logistically avoided. He started a small weekly tech help circle that accidentally became a support group. Password resets turned into life conversations. One widower said, "My kids love me, but they don't have time for me." He answered gently, "Then we'll build a place where time exists." That circle grew. Connection multiplies when it's not hoarded. His daughter attended one of the gatherings once, just to observe. Driving home, she said, "You didn't just survive being pushed out. You built doors for other people." He shrugged. Pain is wasted if it only hurts. Years after the original Christmas rejection, she finally asked a question she'd been circling. "Were you angry at me?" He took his time before answering. Truth deserves pacing. "Yes," he said, "but I decided not to live angry at you." She nodded, absorbing the distinction. Anger can visit without becoming a resident. That's emotional maturity. Most people never get taught directly. Another turning point came when she found herself defending him in a conversation with friends. Strongly, confidently, without hesitation. Halfway through the defense, she stopped and laughed. "What?" they asked. "I just realized," she said, "I used to do the opposite." Growth becomes real when your reflex changes. One winter evening, the anniversary season of that long-ago Christmas, she brought him a small wrapped box. Inside was a restaurant receipt he'd kept from a night they first met, the Sunday dinner couple. He didn't even know she'd seen it, in his keepsake drawer. On the back she'd written, "Thank you for saying yes when you were hurting." No long letter. Just that, because she understood now. The hinge of the entire story was a small acceptance in a low moment. People imagine life changes through big decisions. Most transformations come from tiny, courageous ones made while sad. Let's talk about the part nobody likes to admit. Not every broken family relationship heals like this. Some don't come back. Some shouldn't. Some remain unsafe or one-sided. This story isn't a guarantee. It's a possibility. What made the difference here wasn't time alone. It was three things: ownership without excuse, boundaries without cruelty, welcome without scorekeeping. Remove any one of those and the bridge collapses. Near the end of the decade mark, they recreated the once lonely holiday, but differently. Same calendar date, entirely different room, full table, mixed chairs, loud conversation. At one point, someone asked how they all met. The older couple started to tell the story. He tried to wave it off. They told it anyway. "Best guess we ever stole from a restaurant," the older woman joked. His daughter reached over under the table and squeezed his hand. No one else saw. That squeeze said everything words used to fail at. Here's the thought I'll leave you with, the piece that stays with me most. Exclusion is one of the deepest human wounds. It hits older than logic, older than pride. That's why it reshapes people so easily. Some become harder, sharper, closed. Others become builders. Builders of new tables, new circles, new doors. The difference isn't personality. It's decision. So if you're in your empty restaurant season right now, emotionally or literally, remember this. The invitation that rewrites your story may feel small when it appears. Accept it anyway. And if you're the one who sees someone sitting alone, be the person who asks twice. Tell me in the comments, have you ever rebuilt belonging from scratch? I read every story. Subscribe if you want more long-form narratives about betrayal, boundaries, quiet revenge, and earned reconciliation. Because sometimes the loudest victory is a full table where your seat is never questioned again.